Welcome to Buffoon of the Week, a show where we review the past week's news and current events and find people who said or did something so monumentally stupid that they earn a shot at winning our dubious distinction. And that's where you come in. You see, we nominate two worthy buffoons, and you vote for who you think was the bigger buffoon by either clicking on the eye in the top right corner of the video or by leaving a comment below in favor of your choice. Last week, it was another close battle, but you voted for Twitter as Buffoon of the Week. And we've noticed an interesting dynamic developing these days, as the votes on our social media were clearly in favor of Central Park Karen, while our friends here on YouTube went for Twitter. It's something we're going to keep an eye on. If you're watching us for the first time, or if you've seen every episode, we want you to know that we regularly release our videos on Mondays at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. So if you like our growing show, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We need your help to grow our show, so please help a brother out. We want to get to our next goal of 200 subscribers as quickly as possible. Once again, our nominating committee had no shortage of options, and those that didn't measure up still earn a shout out as a dishonorable mention. Okay, before we start making fun of the news, we know that there's been a lot of heavy topics being discussed lately. And yes, a lot of what we're going to be talking about in this video is somehow connected to the fallout over the tragic death of George Floyd. I hope you'll see that we are not making light of this tragedy at all, and that we're not taking a position either way on any heavy topics. After all, what do you care about what a clown like me thinks? But that said, there are a lot of people on the periphery of the story out there who deserve our side eye of shame. And throughout this whole thing, don't be afraid to laugh. It's part of the healing. You know, a week doesn't go by where our committee doesn't talk about former Buffoon of the Week Bill de Blasio, who everyone has decided won't be nominated again this year because, well, he'd probably win every single week. This past week, of course, the former Warren Wilhelm was all talk and no action in the midst of our national angst. Even though New York was under a citywide curfew intended to ease unrest, de Blasio held a press conference last Thursday saying that protesters could break curfew so long as they behave themselves, but they need to leave when the police tell them to.
I want to emphasize, I don't think there is anything but clarity if we say there's a curfew at 8 p.m. and that folks are being told consistently, there's a curfew here and we're showing respect for protest, but you need to go home. And if at a certain point officers say, okay, it's time, we need to go now, people need to listen to that.
This makes perfect sense, of course, because protesters against the police already out breaking a police-enforced curfew typically listen to police orders. You should also know that de Blasio had previously said that coronavirus-related restrictions on non-essential businesses and places of worship would continue even as protesters and looters were allowed the run of the city. Because in de Blasio's leftist fantasy world, the coronavirus agreed not to infect protesters who weren't social distancing. Speaking of fantasy worlds, de Blasio also decided to wax poetic about John Lennon's Imagine.
I understand, I don't mean to make light of this, but I'm reminded of the song Imagine by John Lennon. We played it at my inauguration. I think everyone who hears that song in its fullness thinks about, what about a world where people got along differently? What about a world where we didn't live with a lot of the restrictions that we live with?
You know what? I'm with you on this one, Bill. We are all imagining. We're imagining an actual working mayor of the city of New York who isn't a national embarrassment. Speaking of completely useless people, let's introduce you to a disturbing trend we've seen this past week. Protest selfies. These wastes of humanity show up at protests or in the aftermath of a protest to use the pain of others as a backdrop for their latest social media posts. I mean, look at these buffoons. They're not there for change. They're there for likes and influence and to put on how woke they are. I mean, I don't even know who I'm angrier at. The people posing for the photos? Or the boyfriends of Instagram who are taking these stupid pictures? Even so-called journalists got into the act. An extern with the Washington Examiner was fired after news broke last week that Fiona Moriarty McLaughlin faked activism for an Instagram photo op, posing with a drill and a boarded up building for the gram. The stupid literally burns, people. But also we gotta give a big shout out to Twitter user Influencers in the Wild for documenting and collecting all this insanity. And finally, The small Long Island hamlet of Merrick, New York, made national news when residents tried to block 100 Black Lives Matter protesters from marching, suggesting that they should be rerouted to march through a more diverse town nearby. Yeah, nothing racist about that at all. But likely racism aside, think about that. It's a protest, protesting. I'm half shocked someone didn't scream out, "Gutter is a tool."
We're not gonna protest. We're not gonna protest.
We're not gonna protest.
We're not gonna protest.
We're not gonna protest. We're not gonna protest.
We're not gonna protest.
We're not gonna protest.
But even in the face of such massive buffoonery, this week's nominees blew them all away. It's a battle of loud, shrill personalities as we pit Debra Messing against McCain. This ought to be good. This week's first nominee is Will and Grace star Debra Messing. Last Tuesday, Messing posted a tweet comparing President Trump's photo in front of St. John's Church to an image of Nazi dictator Adolf Hitler. In the photo she posted, Hitler appears to be holding a Bible in a similar pose. Of course, Messing, a high-profile Trump hater, jumped on the easy comparison because, as we all know, folks, Godwin's law states the longer an online discussion goes, the probability of a Nazi comparison gets more and more likely. And after 4 years of Trump hating from Messing, she's at peak Hitler. But it's too bad that Messing didn't check the photo before clicking that button, because the Twitterverse locked on target, exposing that Messing had used a doctored photo where someone had photoshopped a Bible over Hitler's Nazi salute. Welcome to Fake News Town, Population U. Twitter later fact-checked the tweet, calling it manipulated media, and Messing eventually had to do the deletion of shame, but she stood by her comparison that Trump equals Hitler. Because even in the face of incontrovertible evidence, buffoons never admit they're wrong. Like what you've seen so far? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. Leave us a comment as well because we read every single one of them. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show. This week's second nominee is the so-called conservative voice on ABC's The View, McCain. Last Tuesday, McCain took to Twitter. Why is it always Twitter? Not that we're complaining, because, Twitter keeps us in the buffoonery business. McCain took to Twitter to comment on ongoing protests occurring outside of her New York City apartment. Calling New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, again, we can't seem to get away from de Blasio. Calling de Blasio and New York Governor Andrew Cuomo disgraces, McCain tweeted that her neighborhood looks like a, quote, war zone, and that leaders are letting cities burn to the ground and be destroyed. But it turns out that McCain's views may be, shockingly, fake news. Kirsten Bartlett, a comedy writer and neighbor of McCain's, responded that their neighborhood's just fine. Then, the buffoonery jumped up a level, as McCain tried to clarify that she was basing her opinion on news coverage, and even implied that she may not have been in New York at the time she tweeted. So just like Messing, the Twitterverse did its job, dragging McCain for lying, getting caught lying, and then making herself out to be a victim by claiming that a, quote, gossip organization was about to run a story about where she and her family actually were, which many people believe wasn't New York City. So let this be a lesson to all of you. It's better to shut up, get humble, and take the L than to open your big fat mouth again and confirm that you're a bigger buffoon than we actually thought. Hey, don't forget that Buffoon of the Week is all over social media, so when you're online, make sure you like us on Facebook, you follow us on the Twitters, and go on over to Instagram and like us there too. But the most important thing you have to do is remember to subscribe right here on YouTube. So, we have two colossal buffoons vying for your nomination. But who deserves your vote? To help you make your decision, we'll run each nominee through our trademark-pending Sharpton scale of buffoonery. First, we'll measure each nominee's buffoonish nature by comparing her to the only perfect buffoon ever measured on our scale, the Reverend Al Sharpton. Then, we'll measure each nominee's actions' buffoonish magnitude using our custom unit of measurement, the Sharpton. Let's get to it. Science waits for no one. Debra Messing is a habitual buffoon. The manipulated photo aside, Messing has a pretty long history of tweeting without thinking. Like last September when she demanded that Trump donors be put on a blacklist and also disparaged black Trump voters. Messing also has a history of using Nazi references on Twitter, even calling Jewish conservative Ben Shapiro a Nazi back in 2017. Susan Sarandon, probably the most well-known Hollywood liberal, got into a feud with Messing, calling Messing ill-informed. Messing earns a score of 79, and her latest action and unrepentant go-to Nazi claims gets 5.65 gigasharptons. Meghan McCain is also a habitual buffoon. The lying and getting caught aside, McCain has a history of playing the victim, especially in arguments on The View and online. I mean, how many times has she cried on national TV? Even conservative women like Dana Lash have feuded with McCain online, with Lash insinuating that McCain is dumb. McCain earns a score of 79, and her latest action and her unrepentant victimhood gets 5.65 gigasharptons. Yep, the exact same scores as Debra Messing. So there you go, folks. 2 equally matched nominees worthy of our mantle. But which buffoon is bigger? Time to vote! Tell us who you got for this week's Buffoon of the Week. Thanks once again for watching the entire video, we really appreciate it. Be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, it's so important. We're trying to get 200 subscribers by the end of the month. If you can help us with that, that would be great. And come back next week where we'll have 2 more nominees, but only one can be Buffoon of the Week.